Okay, good evening, everyone. Today is the 11th of June, 2025. This is Sachin Karnik here from the Angel Wing LLC. Great to see everyone online, as well as those who are listening to these discussions and presentations independently. We are continuing our examination of the key technical ideas in the Foundations of Angel Wing technical book. And we were talking about cognitive dissonance last time, and we're going to go into that a bit further and look at it from some additional perspectives today. Just as a quick review, cognitive dissonance is the discomfort from holding conflicting thoughts. So I would just like to extend that, as I mentioned last time very quickly. There are conflicting emotions. There are conflicting memories. So it's not just thoughts. I mean, thoughts is fine. We can just say the conflicts within the mind. There's energy that is getting funneled and concentrated and conflicted internally also. So all of the five, thoughts, emotions, memories, desires, and energies, conflict of desires is also there. Right? So yeah, I think we can extend Leon Festinger's model that way. Now, let's look at some examples of this. In just a moment, we'll look at some examples here. Oh, here it is. Yeah. So a person, for example, values health but continues to smoke. These are very simple, like middle school examples, middle school, high school level, simple examples. You know, we see that all the time, right? Someone who values, I want to be healthy, but still the smoking goes on. There is a dissonance inside, internally. An environmentalist who frequently flies for vacations, right? So there's maybe a conflict there. Believing in honesty but cheating on taxes. Loving animals but eating meat regularly, let's say. Supporting equality but harboring unconscious biases. Very interesting stuff, right? This happens quite often. Feeling guilty after lying to a friend. Anxiety when actions don't match values. Stress from living a double life. Shame after making unethical business decisions. Discomfort when voting against one's beliefs. It's very interesting. Let's see here. Okay. Then, all right. So, again, the question for us technically, as far as unraveling this notion of dissonance, meaning it's not resonance, it's dissonance. It's an internal conflict, internal contradiction that happens within. The concept has been tested. It has been definitely validated. It is used to explain rationalization of effort. People try to take effort to resolve this conflict from within. There is quite a bit of research on attitude, behavior, consistency. So there's lots of theories regarding self-justification. You know, we justify our actions. So a lot of the actions we take are trying to resolve this internal conflict. Now, interestingly enough, what can happen here is that there is a signal of misalignment within the self, right? So when we're trying to understand the construct of alignment versus misalignment, we are trying to understand the construct of dissonance. It needs to be very clear that there is construct validity. And remember, this is a bit of a technical workshop. So those who are attending new, please try to listen to this from the beginning. That'll make things clear. The construct is a valid construct. The construct of dissonance. It's a constructed theory initially in the mind of a researcher like Leon Festinger, and then it's been validated using multiple research techniques that there really is such a thing as dissonance that happens in people's lives. All right? Well, assume that that's the case, and research has shown there is that. You know, it's the conflicts inside. Now, how to resolve it? What can we do about it? Then we have another construct, and that is alignment. So the construct of dissonance is connected to the construct of alignment. Now, alignment is also an idea. It's an idea that I would like to be aligned. Well, what does that mean? How is that conceptualized? So there are ways that researchers have conceptualized what alignment is. There's many ways. There's qualitative studies, quantitative studies. So for example, one way that researchers approach alignment is to do survey research. They might do an extensive survey, or they might do qualitative research, talk to 50 people and do in-depth interviews with a whole set of different criteria and questions to determine what alignment is actually for each of those individuals, and then eventually to come up with the validation of the construct. Then there's mixed methods approaches, qualitative and quantitative. So these are approaches in research, in social science research, to validate the constructs. And once they are validated, now, what's next? If you take the idea of alignment, the question is going to be, is alignment even possible? Because the existence of dissonance, being psychologically uncomfortable, will motivate the person to try to reduce the dissonance to achieve connaissance, C-O-N-S-O-N-A-N-C-E, connaissance. There's dissonance and connaissance. So that is the motivation, because nobody wants to be in an internal stressful situation. How do you resolve it? How do you go about resolving it? Right? So the steps to be taken to resolve the dissonance are also shown in psychological research, that people may take a decision-making process to clarify their values, what ought to be done in this situation versus what I feel like doing, versus what may be an immediate instantaneous gratification versus something that is really having a long-term benefit for me, right? So the resolution of the dissonance can come in many different ways. Now I'm just going to share with you my commentary on this, that the resolution comes by realizing that the TEMDE, thoughts, emotions, memories, desires, and energy, they need to be in harmony with each other. This is the master key, in Sachin's opinion. After years and years of research on all these questions, this is a master key that will open all the doors. I have to ask myself, hour to hour, day to day, as time is going on, am I in resonance, or am I in dissonance, or am I in resonance? Am I in connaissance? You see, because yes, cognitive dissonance is what is directly experienced, but there's a lot of emotion with that too. So the cognition and emotion should not be in conflict. And that's not easy, because we are faced with different twists and turns as life goes on, and it's not always in a very connected way. We feel one way, but then we think another way. It happens all the time. Desires particularly are fragmented. They're contradictory. We've talked about that before also, to some extent, but we'll talk a lot more about it later on. Because when desire itself is split, that means that we are not in full harmony. Energy gets damaged. Now, the point is that alignment, we can start with a vision of alignment. And we are talking about that kind of in the PTP program, about balancing areas and all that. But as far as the construct of alignment is concerned, what we can do, or how researchers will go about it, is to try to create a model of alignment. So for example, if I was constructing a research model, which I've done in the past, so how the way you would construct a research model is to take, in this situation, the ideas of the thoughts, emotions, memories, desires, energy, the 5 points, the 5 aspects, and then develop a theoretical model about that. So define each one of them, how are they all measured, and then try to see what are the variables that cause misalignment, what are the variables that cause alignment, things like that, right? Now that will be done in a more formal research with a certain population, and then there'll be a sample taken from that population, things like that. There's ways of going about it in terms of trying to do the actual research. But in terms of, let's say, like self-help, self-development, how can we use this idea of alignment for ourselves? Well, there's a couple of steps. One is to create a vision. Where is my alignment? How am I aligned in my day-to-day life? across the 12 dimensions, across just the different experiences I'm having, am I moving through one experience after another in an aligned state? And if I'm shifting away from it, what is my experience and how can I get back to it? Take a simple example, something like just having lunch, right? We get up in the morning, we're energized, we're doing all kinds of things, and then we eat our lunch, and then our emotions change. We feel a little bit low energy. We feel more like we don't want to move around so much. Then the motivation changes. So many changes occur just after having a meal. Something simple like that. So those changes happen physiologically. They happen and they change the alignment. So again, slowly realign back to where we want to be. You see, otherwise we'll get off track. It's possible to get off on a different track. So this happens on a day-to-day basis. Having a conversation with someone, talking to a friend, or reading a book, or watching something on TV, or the current political situation in the United States or in the world, that can cause a lot of misalignment. Right, so this dissonance that happens is definitely it's a way where energy is in a state of disequilibrium. That there is disequilibrium. So the lack of equilibrium, because equilibrium is what is needed for alignment. Now, again, you have to go, this is another approach. In addition to the other approaches we talk about, one of the approaches is just to open up one construct thoroughly. So what is disequilibrium? I have to ask myself. It's like a more inquiry-based approach. I can sit maybe with a group of people, maybe with myself, and I can just say, okay, where is equilibrium? What does equilibrium mean? What is equilibrium actually? And then start opening it up. So equilibrium would mean that different desires are in harmony with each other. Different thoughts are in harmony with each other. Are they really? You see what happens in our lives, right? As time goes on throughout the day, what we wanted to do during the morning time is changed considerably by 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. The things that we have set, that this is, I'm going to do this today, we don't feel like doing it. It changes. It changes rapidly. And then we say, no, I'll do it later. I don't want to do it now. I want to do something else. Our desires change. So that's a contradiction. At 8 a.m., Sachin had 3 desires to do whatever I wanted to do. And then at 1 p.m., those desires get obliterated. New desires come up. So now, what have I done? I have not followed through on my own wishes. What is this? This is a dissonance, a type of dissonance. Now, someone may counter-argue and say, wait a minute. That's just the way life goes. I should just do whatever I want to do whenever. Okay, well, do that then. But is there a dissonance in that? Is there lack of harmony in that? Is there equilibrium in that? Because there is strength that is gained by recognizing internal dissonance, internal tearing apart of energy due to conflict, and then following through on one's own decisions. That will eliminate the resistance from inside and the dissonance. By deciding, okay, these are the 7 things I'm going to do today, I'm going to do them. Even if I don't want to do them, I've decided I'm going to do it, that's it. Then you start taking actions in the right direction, eventually realignment happens. So realignment can happen by taking the right actions that we have pre-decided. Now, I could have pre-decided that I'm not going to do much of anything. What if someone says, I'm going to decide not to make any decisions? Somebody said that to me one time. The only rule I want to follow in life is that I don't want to follow any rules. That's my big rule. Think about this idea. The only rule that I want to follow of any kind is that I'm not following any rules. Okay, but then there you go. Then see what happens in that. It's up to you. Experiment with that for a couple of days. See what happens. And does that lead to a harmonious life? If it does, okay, try it out and see. I don't think it will if you just cannot live that way. We need certain boundaries and certain discipline. The key here is following through on decisions that we are making. And that will eliminate the dissonance. Because the dissonance is a very serious problem in human consciousness overall. It's a serious problem overall because most people are, the TEMDE, it is like spinning, literally. And I don't know if I've ever described it that way or not, but the thoughts, emotions, memories, desires, and energy, they are not static. They are literally spinning, and it is actually connected with the chakra system. So when we do the retreat here at my place, we'll talk more about that from that point of view. But the fact is that it's moving all the time. Thoughts are not just in one place. They are dynamic, definitely. I mean, we can temporarily still the mind through meditation or medication or whatever, but then it comes back active and it goes on. So it is not a static state. Emotions are also changing. There's not just one emotion that we have. It changes. But the question becomes, can it be aligned? Can it be in a state of equilibrium? And if it is, at least in theory, then the dissonance is gone, meaning what? The internal conflict is gone. Then the motivation has to be there to remove that internal conflict. And that requires a little bit of work. That requires a process to go through. That's kind of, in one sense, that's what Angel Wing is about overall. But as far as our presentation here, to take proactive steps to recognize dissonance and then to recognize connaissance. It's a recognition of both. Where is my dissonance? Where is my connaissance? Now, if I'm a researcher, I would have to operationalize all this. And there's a lot of technical ways of going through that. Creating surveys or doing experimental designs or quasi-experimental design. There's a lot of ways of kind of doing all that research to try to figure that out, to get at that somehow, with a certain population, and what does that mean? And then you do a research project on that. But in our program, what we can do, if you want, even you can do your own research project on this, right? So, and it's, you take the construct and say, I want to understand cognitive dissonance. So start doing some research on it, looking into it, listen to this talk and recording, add your own ideas to it. And when we do that, say, I am my own researcher. You can do that, absolutely. It is a way of discovering your own internal alignment. We have general guidelines, no doubt. And again, dissonance is something that can persist. It can persist from time to time. It can come back again and again. Like with our memories, for example. Our memories, we pull some stuff out of that, and then we begin to get misaligned from within. So the misalignment is, as I said, it's a construct. Create a picture, visual of my alignment today. So this is how that is done. And then from a research point of view, this is what eventually leads to the reality behind the construct, right? The reality behind the construct is that there is really a state of alignment. The construct of alignment is there. Can I actually touch that? To really touch that is what what the psychologists or other researchers would try to do through some kind of an intervention. Once they understand how it works, and all that, well, what do you do about it? What are people to do about when there is an imbalance going on? Well, to take steps that are 100% in resonance with my vision of what is alignment. Now, the next question will be, how do I create that vision? I have to examine myself. I have to see each area of my life. So this can be done through the aid of a therapist or a counselor or a coach or a friend or whoever it can be done through. We do it through PTP, on Tuesday evenings. But it's to get a purview of all the areas of one's life, and then from that to visualize that, my health is going in this one direction. My mind is going in this direction. I have relationships. I have kids. I have grandkids. I have this. I have that. I have husband or I have wife. I have occupation, finance, money, investments, this, that, recreation. So many things are always going around. So look at that 12-dimension diagram and then see it and then decide my alignment is, write it down. Create a picture of one's alignment. And that takes some time. Right, so this is a way that researchers would do an intervention with their subjects. So if you have 100 people trying to get into a state of alignment who have some level of dissonance, the researcher or the counselor or therapist or someone doing the research would actually guide them through the process of getting into a state of alignment. And this is how they would do it, by these kinds of steps. So that's called the operationalization of the construct of alignment. It has to be operationalized. It has to be shown how to measure it, how to detect it, how to realign oneself. How does a person go through the process from disalignment, misalignment into that? All of that would be involved in it. And as that goes on, there will be an intervention phase in the research process. And then there will be a pre-test and post-test. So how much alignment was there at the very beginning? After 12 weeks or 15 weeks, where are you at the post-test? And that's how the research is done in a XOX design, a quasi-experimental design, right? There's a higher level of design called a true experimental design, right? So that's a double-blind procedure and things like that. And at the lowest level in the research hierarchy is the survey research, right? So there's something called the research hierarchy. So survey research is at the bottom, and the true experimental design is all the way at the top. And there's a bunch of the intermediaries in between. So this is called evidence-based research. And this is how you collect the evidence. The research is then done, and the individuals who are trying to actually go through this, they're subjects in this study, let's say, then they take regular steps. And we kind of do that in our Tuesday evening program. But this is about construct validation specifically. To validate that, is this intervention, like the steps I just laid out, well, create a vision. How do I create this vision? That has to be guided through each person's vision of alignment is going to be different. The concept of alignment needs to be held within, and then it has to be applied. What are the obstacles to the application of the construct? All of those kinds of pieces are there. And then eventually, the post-test is done after, let's say, 15 weeks. They go through this, this sequence. And then if the results are statistically significant using t-test and Pearson R and stuff like that, there's a bunch of statistical tests that are done based on the data collected to determine the level of significance. Are the results statistically significant? Right? So I'm just presenting to you how this is done. You may have studied this already in school at some point. So from that, then there is some backing for the intervention that, this actually does work. It has a 70% effect or a 60% effect or whatever. There's a correlation effect. There's all kinds of statistical tests like that. So why is that good? Because then they can implement that further. They can get funding for it, stuff like that. And then do that again and do it again and keep repeating it and enhance it further until you come up with an intervention that absolutely is so time-tested, so well-tested that it could work in hundreds of thousands of people. You see, so this is how therapeutic interventions are operationalized, and they are tested using t-tests, Pearson R, using standard deviations and all that kind of stuff, inferential statistics, and inductive statistics, descriptive statistics. All of those areas are there to try to show the power of the validation. Yes. Thank you so much. Okay. Yeah, I did hit pause there. So, all right. So this is very interesting. This is how medications are created. I mean, where did Advil come from? Where did any psych med or physical health med, blood pressure medicines or any of them, where did they come from? They came from this approach. They came with an idea, then they did the test in the laboratories, and then they tested on animals. They test somewhere first, like that. Then they do a sample with a certain group of people with low doses, and that they develop this. Then eventually the FDA gives the approval for the drug. So similarly in psychology and social sciences, these are soft sciences. So the interventions are not medicines. They are these types of psychological or more behavioral intervention. So how to change the mindset from within, and this is how this is done. It's a fascinating area. It's very, very tricky sometimes to get at these things, Because, even the discussion on what is even meant by alignment, I mean, that there could be a lot of controversy about that and philosophical thoughts about that. So you have to operationalize it. It's a word, right? It's a constructed word. It's a construct, meaning it's a constructed idea that is operationalized, it's measured, and then there's an intervention created to reach that state of alignment. And that's an entire research process. Now, having said all of that, just a couple more points on this. That when a person is actually going through an intervention, maybe with a therapist or a counselor or some kind of a coaching program, or they're doing it as a self-help group, like the people doing the 12 steps, for example, it has to do with realizing the reality of one's life, which is impinging pressure on the individual and the direction that one is going in. You see, because there is pressure inside due to the dissonance. The dissonance is going to create pressure. There's ethical conflicts. There are ethical decisions to be made. There are financial decisions to be made in life. There's issues with children. There's issues with family members. So that creates dissonance. So the way to resolve that dissonance is to recognize that we are putting pressure inside that conflict, and to say, look at it in a new light. That I don't want to create a disturbance inside of me. I want to create the right kind of interaction with each situation I'm connected to. Can I do that? You see, yes, you can. And then how do you go about it? The straightforward method, as I mentioned just now, is to create the vision of true alignment. Now, again, all of our other programs are talking about that, but in terms of the research-based, the foundations workshops that we're doing right now, the construct is a very tricky one, because when we're talking about developing the TEMDE construct, this is another way to really understand the inner workings of the mind. So in Angel Wing, we have our own perspective on this. That is the thoughts, emotions, memories, desires, energy. This is a construct, and the construct is that they can be harmonized, meaning the thoughts can align with emotions. Thoughts can align with memories. Thoughts align with desires, and thoughts have energy. So all five are connected that way. Emotions align with thoughts, and it just goes like that. Each one is connected with with the other four. So when one of them is aligned with the other four, what do we have? We have harmony. We have equilibrium. And that's what we want. But if we're not in that state of equilibrium, to discover where the misalignment is happening. Maybe because the desires are so many that they're throwing the person off. We know from our experience where the misalignment happens. So that is a more experiential way to try to detect the misalignment. And again, from a research point of view, the researchers would actually set up various ways of trying to detect that and then measure that, and at the same time develop some intervention around it. But for our purposes here, we can literally try using the PTP program and using the constructs, the three constructs we've talked about here, that is dissonance, then alignment, and equilibrium. So there's three constructs, CONSTRUCTS. Those three constructs, if we connect them with the personal transformation program practices and principles at Tuesday evening, we have a match made in heaven. The constructs that are presented here, each and every idea connected and applicable, with the PTP program. If you bridge that together, then the rapid progression towards self-mastery can happen. That is at least a hypothesis on my part. We haven't done this before, so we want to know if that is actually true. In my mind, I would hypothesize, yes, that is true. Meaning what? I have to bring myself into alignment, the TEMDE, come into alignment. Number one, well, I need to take steps for that. I'm going to align for that. Tuesday evening presentations help for that. That's fine. But once I detect misalignment, I want to get out of that immediately, get back into alignment. And then by doing so, recognize experientially where is the imbalance happening. I know that I can feel it. There's a change going on. Well, what do I do with that change? Let's say, for example, an emotion turns a bit negative. What do you do with that? Or emotion turns into some kind of a conflict with someone. What do we do with it? So we need to be able to retune, hold the concept of resonance, equilibrium, steadiness, alignment. These are psychology constructs. Hold it inside and say, I am going to stay with this. I want to make sure I understand them clearly enough, and then apply them. Apply the methodology that is shown in the Angel Wing program, across our multiple programs, to actually align ourselves. Right? So once we begin to align day to day, hour to hour, remember, the application is 1 hour at a time. And there are literally, many elements, many aspects within ourselves where the magnitude of the dissonance will be a function of the importance given to each situation in life. The magnitude of the dissonance, how much dissonance is there? Remember, dissonance means lack of resonance, it's the imbalances within. There's the magnitude, meaning that's the quantity of the dissonance. You see, so the total amount of dissonance between one aspect or one situation and the remainder of the person's cognition, the TEMDE, will depend on the proportion of the relevant situations that are dissonant with the individual in question. All that simply means is if a person is having an argument with somebody else, how much relevance is that argument having in relation to all the other aspects of my life? Sometimes we may have a disagreement with someone. It doesn't mean a whole lot. It does just blow it off, and it doesn't mean much. We don't think about it at all. But sometimes an argument or some disagreement lingers and lingers and lingers and lingers and lingers, right? So there is something called the total amount of dissonance, and this is the opening of the construct. Between the specific situation, and as I think Festinger may have called it, the element, and then the person's overall situation in life. Thus, if the overwhelming majority of relevant elements are cognisant with, say, a behavioral element, then the dissonance with this behavioral element is slight. What that simply means is that each fragment of dissonance, it begins to interact with the overall experience across all dimensions of life. And and what can happen, one dissonant event can cause almost like a vortex effect across multiple areas. So for example, just a minor argument with somebody at work, that can carry over at home, that can carry over with children, that can affect appetite, that can affect our state of emotional well-being. Just a minor disagreement. We keep thinking about it. What should I do? What should I not? The analysis of it goes on and on and on and on. This is dissonance. This is what happens in life. So this is a very practical point to keep in mind. So what we are trying to achieve here is to recognize the magnitude of the dissonance. And by recognizing it, then to flip it around into equilibrium. So no, okay, I recognize that this is beginning to now spin in different ways. I need to pull it back. I need to pull it back into my own natural alignment. And that's why we have the Tuesday evening program, which I won't repeat those ideas here. That's why we have that on Tuesday evening, to all those exercises and all those concepts, energy utilization and all those ideas. That is there to learn how to pull this back. Here in this technical workshop is to understand the constructs that's which are all related ultimately into self-mastery, right? So how is this related to self-mastery in the Foundation's technical book? Well, that 816-page book, if you were to summarize all of it, it definitely comes to this, that we want to resolve all the internal dissonance, all of it. Then that will open the door into self-mastery. Right? So that is the connection. So the self-mastery is also a construct. And that is why we have 816 pages of intense research on it. Yes, it's a construct, but now we are connecting dissonance with this construct of self-mastery, right? So what is the technical connection? The technical connection is that there cannot be any self-mastery when there is dissonance across the TEMDE. There cannot be self-mastery. There will never be self-mastery as long as there's dissonance. One has to be integrated from within. And there's many approaches. All those approaches are in other programs that we talk about, right? So that's the connection. Now, just one or two more points, and I'll open it up for conversation. The reduction of dissonance. I'm just looking at some of my notes here. The presence of dissonance gives rise to pressures to reduce or eliminate the dissonance. Nobody wants to be in that dissonant state. So we are motivated to eliminate that. Good. Eliminate it properly, correctly, with the right amount of energy, but be careful how we try to do that. You see, because sometimes the attempt to eliminate it can strengthen it also. So the strength of the pressures to reduce the dissonance is a function of the magnitude of the dissonance. Right? So this is actually a direct quote from I think this is from Festinger's book actually on this. So a theory of cognitive dissonance. Yes, right. So what he says here that the strength of the pressures to reduce the dissonance. What is the pressure to reduce? If that is very strong, to get rid of the dissonance is a function of the magnitude of the dissonance. How deep is that dissonance? That is the strength of it. That's the quantity of it. We use that word quantity. The word magnitude is probably a better word to use here. But that is more clear, right? So the strength. So if once motivation comes, I don't want any disturbance today. Okay, make that determination in the morning and stick to it all the way through. Then that is called the strength of the pressure to reduce the dissonance. Okay, that's what that means there. There's a lot of amazing ideas that Festinger has talked about. They are worthy of study and a lot of research, but I want to try to keep it pretty straightforward. Resistance to reduce the dissonance could also be there to detect that. Resistance to change of behavioral cognitive elements. There can be resistance and say, no, I don't want to change certain things about myself. All right, well then that difficulty could remain, right? So those are some points for today. All right, so we're already at 7:40. I went a little over time. I'm going to stop here, turn off my recorder here, and we'll open it up for discussion.